put it, which was to represent the states. That no longer seems to be an issue anymore.
Which really wasn't its core original role, if you look at those initial debates.
It was a check on the power of the central government.
It was a check on the government of the day, and it has never, from 1901, never voted along state lines.
Yeah, but the Constitution actually says that the senators are for the states.
That's what the Constitution says. In the same way as a House of Representative person represents their local electorate. But it is important, I agree, it's important to have people in the Senate who can take an independent view, and that's why the Democrats have always had that obligation to have a conscience vote on every issue. If you feel strongly enough about it, you've actually got to take responsibility for what you stand for.
But you've even had premiers like Peter Beattie who said that the performance of the Senate, and by default every senator here, that there's been a total failure of the Senate to live up to its charter as the state's house.
Well, it has in the last couple of years, because it's controlled by
So why haven't you cared more
parties.
about Queensland then?
Look, we know the Labor policy on the Senate, unrepresentative swill, Keating called it. Labor abolished the upper house in Queensland. They want to abolish the upper house in South Australia. Well, South Australia, they want to do that now. South Australia, they want to do that now. So the Labor Party talking about the sanctity of the Senate lacks, with respect to Claire, any credibility at all. And under the last 3 years of our government, there have been more bills referred to Senate committees, more bills sent back to the government for correction with government majorities on those committees. So this thing that Andrew is trying to mislead people with, even under the present system, the Senate does have a very big scrutiny role, and the scrutiny role is conducted by government senators in those committees.
But Senator, you've had Bob Brown, for instance, from the Greens, Larissa Waters, who says that there's been a failure of the Senate both in its check role, and he's criticised the committee role as well, that the committees haven't been functioning as well as they should.
Look, the numbers of committees have been cut by the Howard government. The time that committees have been able to spend examining legislation and consulting with Queenslanders and Australians has been cut. The Senate's been treated like a rubber stamp, and here we are, we're seeing yet more sandpicked interaction between our politicians, when what we should be talking about is the issues that are confronting Queensland and confronting this nation.
Well, here's
climate
an issue
change,
there.
our workplace rights and our health and education funding.
The Murray-Darling basis.
Truthfulness. I mean, Senator Brown complains about committees and then he never turns up at them. And when I was a minister in the environment area, we used to send him press releases to tell him the Environment Committee estimates was on. He never turned up. So I don't know why the Greens complain about this. It's just the sort of stunts you get from the Greens.
We have a very active Senate team that regularly attends and participates in Senate committees.
James Baker?
Senator, if you've got a committee system, but all your senators are then forced to toe the party line and vote along party lines, then what's the point of having the committee system? And as many disagreements as I have with the Democrats, at least they're saying, well, we've got to have parties that allow their senators to vote along state lines if they feel they should.
Well, the Liberal Party does that. I mean,
when was the
classic
last time
example, Robert Hill crossed the floor about 10 times in his early days there. Our people do cross the floor quite regularly, and we're allowed to do that in the Liberal Party, and long may that continue.
But John Howard has been the most centralist, was arguably the most centralist Prime Minister in Australian history. And the states are fast losing power and importance. In the Senate, it seems you're more concerned about national issues and the benefit of the nation as opposed to the direct interests of the state. So do you think the Federation then needs reshaping, either to scrap the states or to strengthen them?
Well, look, this isn't Liberal Party policy,
no,
can I say to you,
vote.
but I do think the whole system needs to be re-looked at. State governments have made an absolute mess of their finances, of their health system, of their education system, and more the federal government is finding it has to come in and fix the problems of the states. And it begs the question, why bother with states? And I think we not too far away from the time when you'll have a national government and major regional government.
So everybody else, why bother?
Absolutely the opposite view, that you should be devolving the responsibility for decision making, and that's why the Senate is so important, so that the people of Queensland have the direct ear of their senators and they can contribute. And we need more people who are going to be Queensland's person in Canberra, rather than Canberra's person coming back to Queensland and saying, hey, these are the decisions that have been made down in Canberra, you've got to live with it.
If I can just pick up on that, I think the more important issue is for Queenslanders to have parliamentarians who actually represent them rather than big business, which is what we're seeing from both of the big parties. The big end of town is getting a free ride and your ordinary Queenslanders are getting forgotten about.
Can I ask, mandates? Where do they begin? Where do they end? If we're facing a change of government here, which the polls suggest, but certainly not Senator McDonald wouldn't suggest that, where does a mandate begin?
The only real accurate mandate is if you hold a referendum on something and ask people a specific question. Otherwise, you're there as part of a platform and a philosophy, and the key part of the Democrats' philosophy, particularly with the Senate, is to allow the process to work so that people from all political parties can make a more informed persuasion. One of the really unfortunate aspect of politics is that we actually have a lot of common ground that you never notice because everybody focuses on the bits where you're arguing, and if you can let the process work in a way where the common ground is found, you can make large leaps forward.
The only mandate is to represent the people. That is the only mandate. That can be the only mandate.
So your policies mean nothing then, that you've stood for
it's very important. It's very important that whichever government wins is that they are honest to their policies. Right. Now, we're very concerned about Peter Garrett's comment that we're going to change all these policies. Well, he said it. I mean, he was going to sign Kyoto without involving India and China. I mean, they're his words. He changed them when Mr Rudd came along with a big stick and say, hey, the focus groups aren't agreeing with you, Peter. But we know what Garrett's saying, and that suggests to me that this mandate issue is going to be very important if, and I don't believe it'll happen, if Labor does win, the Senate should let through the issues that Labor have campaigned upon clearly, but we'll be very, very interested in the Garrett approach of changing everything after the election.
We're running short on time, so final thoughts, everybody, and if we could keep it brief. Yep. Starting with you, James Baker.
Well, I think the people of Queensland want their Senate back. They want people who are going to go down to Canberra and be their person in Canberra, not the other way around.
Larissa Waters?
Look, I think Queenslanders are really disappointed that for the last 3 years we've had a Senate that's been treated like a rubber stamp by this government, and I think people will think differently about their Senate vote this time and support the Greens in the Senate because we've got the policies on climate change, we've got the policies about protecting workers' rights, we've got the policies about funding our public health and education systems.
Andrew Bartlett.
Well, whoever wins government out of Labor or the coalition, you need to have a Senate there that's able to keep them in check and play that role as an insurance, and that's the Democrats' key role. That's what we've been doing for 30 years.
Senator Claire Moore?
I think it's important that people think about their Senate vote, and I hope that will happen. I think that the Rudd Labor team is there offering a future that is strong. Our policies are open and transparent. We're listening to Queensland, we're listening to what people are caring about. We are tired of a government that's out of touch. We're tired of a government that is too defensive and focuses on scaring people.
And Senator Ian McDonald.
We haven't been a perfect government, but things have been pretty good. The economy's going well, jobs are being created, people have money in their pockets, taxes have been cut, hospitals and education's been improved at federal expense. We want to see that continue.
Well, on that note, senators and aspirants, thank you very much for joining Stateline.